Welcome everyone to Whimsy Woven Stories. Here, we explore gripping tales of real-life twists. Join our storytelling community.
Looking back now, I realize I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there: small moments, careless comments, subtle changes in their behavior. If I had been paying attention, I would have understood exactly where I stood in my own family. But I wasn't paying attention. I was too busy being the provider, the dependable one, the fool who believed that love and sacrifice were enough to hold a family together. I was wrong. Let me introduce myself. My name is Malcolm and I'm 58 years old. For most of my life, I did what a good husband and father was supposed to do. I worked hard, built a life, provided, protected, and made sure my family had more than I ever did growing up. I wasn't born into wealth. There was no silver spoon, no trust fund waiting for me. Everything I have, I earned. I started at a small accounting firm and clawed my way up the corporate ladder while my wife, Deborah, stayed home to raise our daughter, Sophia. It was an agreement we both made. She wanted to be there for Sophia, and I wanted to make sure they never had to worry about money. I worked late nights, missed weekends, skipped vacations, all of it to give them the best life possible. I bought us a beautiful home in Rosewood Heights, a quiet suburb where kids rode bikes and families hosted Sunday barbecues. Sophia went to the best private schools. Every extracurricular, every dream she had, I made it happen. When college came, I wrote the check in full, no loans, no debt. Just a father doing what he thought was right. I never once asked for gratitude. I didn't need a thank you. I did it because they were my family, my whole world. But somewhere along the line something shifted. At first, it was easy to dismiss. Little things I brushed off because surely my wife and daughter wouldn't take me for granted. Deborah started making big financial decisions without me, a pricey piece of furniture here, a spontaneous vacation there. Whenever I questioned it, she'd laugh it off. "We can afford it, Malcolm. Why are you making a big deal?" Sophia too changed. Her gratitude turned into expectation. She didn't hesitate to ask for money, new clothes, trips with friends, an apartment in the city, but the words, "Thank you, Dad," became rare, almost extinct. Then came the wedding. When Sophia got engaged to Tyler, a corporate lawyer from a wealthy family, I was thrilled. I offered to pay for the entire wedding, even when Tyler's parents insisted on covering half. "Oh no," I told my daughter with a proud smile, "this is my gift to you. I want you to have the wedding of your dreams." I should have seen it then, the way Sophia glanced at her mother as if checking for approval. I should have noticed when Deborah took over all the wedding planning, the venue, the guest list, the catering, without ever asking for my input. I became nothing more than the man signing the checks. But I told myself it was just stress, that they'd include me when it really mattered. I was wrong. The day before what I thought was the wedding, I walked into the kitchen, smiling, and said to Deborah, "I can't wait for the wedding tomorrow." She laughed. Not a nervous laugh or a guilty giggle, but a full, genuine chuckle, like I had just told the funniest joke she'd ever heard. "What?" she said, still grinning. "The wedding was yesterday." And just like that, my life split into two parts, before and after. Before that moment, I was Malcolm, the devoted husband and father, the provider who believed his love was enough. After that moment, I became something else. Standing there, staring at my wife's smug expression, something inside me snapped. Not with anger, not with heartbreak, but with a cold, quiet realization. They had never intended to include me. This wasn't a scheduling error. It was a choice. A deliberate exclusion. I turned to Sophia, waiting for her to say something to correct her mother. Instead, she hesitated, then pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and held up a photo for me to see. There they were, Deborah, Sophia, Tyler, the in-laws, my siblings, my nieces and nephews, smiling and celebrating at the wedding I paid for, without me. My heart pounded, but my face stayed calm. I looked at Deborah, the woman I had spent over 30 years building a life with, sacrificing for, loving without limits. She shrugged, a casual, dismissive shrug, as if I were nothing more than an afterthought. "Guess I forgot to tell you, huh?" she said. It wasn't just that they took me for granted. It wasn't even that they saw me as nothing more than a wallet. In that moment, I understood. To them, I was irrelevant. I set my coffee cup down gently on the counter. No words. No anger. No reaction. Deborah raised an eyebrow, waiting for me to explode. Sophia shifted uncomfortably, sensing something was wrong. But I didn't give them the satisfaction. I turned around, walked down the hallway, grabbed my coat from the rack, and stepped outside into the biting cold. No yelling, no questions, no desperate pleas to be included. Because at that moment, I realized something they hadn't. I had spent my life taking care of them, and they had never once considered what would happen if I simply stopped. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my messages. No missed calls. No texts. I wasn't an afterthought. I wasn't even a thought. I took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and whispered to myself, "Let's see how hard they laugh when I walk away for good." Because that's exactly what I was about to do, and they were going to regret every second of it. Standing outside my own home, the cold air stinging my skin, I realized the chill inside me was far worse. I should have been furious, heartbroken, but all I felt was an empty, aching void. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the crushing realization that I had lived for an illusion. Love, family, loyalty. I had sacrificed everything for them, trusted them, built a life around them, and yet I was never truly part of theirs. They hadn't forgotten me. They had excluded me, deliberately. That truth sank into my bones, heavier than any burden I'd ever carried. I stared down at my phone again, still no calls, no texts, not even a half-hearted excuse. Nothing. I exhaled slowly, watching my breath cloud in the frozen air, and did something I never thought I would. I opened my banking app. For the first time in decades, I looked at my finances not as a provider, not as a husband, not as a father, but as a man who had been used. There it was, every mortgage payment, every credit card bill, every check to Sophia, every monthly deposit into Deborah's personal account, all from me. For them. And now, after everything, they had the audacity to throw a wedding without me. My hand tightened around my phone as I scrolled through the transactions. Every venue deposit, every catering bill, the florist, the dress fittings, even the luxury honeymoon, all paid for by me. Yet they had laughed, looked me in the eye, and decided I didn't matter. My mind raced, fitting the pieces together. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was calculated. I turned back toward the house, my steps slow and deliberate. I didn't know exactly what I expected to find, maybe a flicker of guilt, a crumb of remorse. Instead, as I stepped inside, all I heard was laughter. Deborah's light, careless chuckle. Sophia's amused giggle. I paused just outside the dining room listening. "Dad's going to be fine," Sophia said lightly, unconcerned. "He always gets over things," Deborah agreed. "You know how he is, he sulks for a while, then he moves on. I told you, honey, he wouldn't have fit in anyway. It was an elegant wedding, you know how stiff he can be." Their words sliced through me, sharper than any knife. Elegant. Stiff. I inhaled slowly, forcing the rage down into a cold, heavy stone inside my chest, and stepped into the room. The moment they saw me, the room fell silent. Sophia stiffened. Deborah's expression was unreadable, carefully neutral. They weren't ashamed, they were waiting. Waiting for me to act the way I always had, to get angry, then forgive, to swallow the hurt and keep playing my role. Not this time. Keeping my voice even, I said, "So, you threw a wedding without me." Sophia sighed, already sounding tired of the conversation she hadn't even started. "Please, Dad, don't make this dramatic." I raised an eyebrow. Dramatic? I wasn't even invited to my own daughter's wedding. "It wasn't like that," Deborah cut in smoothly. "We just figured." "No," I interrupted, my voice dangerously calm. "You didn't forget. You decided I didn't belong." Silence. I turned to Sophia. "Do you even realize what you've done?" She shrugged. "Dad, you're acting like we abandoned you. It was just a wedding. I'm still your daughter. You're still my father. Nothing changes. Nothing changes." I let those words hang in the air, letting their sheer audacity sink in. They had excluded me, mocked me, used me, and still expected me to keep providing for them like nothing had happened. I smiled, not warmly but coldly. "It's all right," I said. I spoke quietly as I stepped away from the table. "Nothing changes," I said. They didn't catch the shift in my voice. They had no idea I had just made the biggest decision of my life. Deborah casually took a sip of her wine. "Malcolm, don't be childish. You're blowing this out of proportion." "Blowing it out of proportion," I echoed in my head. Sophia rolled her eyes. "Dad, seriously, we had limited seats. Mom thought it would be best." "Mom thought," I repeated coldly. "So you had no say in your own wedding guest list?" Sophia hesitated. That tiny pause told me everything. She hadn't cared enough to fight for me. Not even once. I nodded slowly and backed away toward the hallway. "Got it," I said. Deborah raised an eyebrow. "Where are you going?" "I need some air," I answered simply. I grabbed my coat, stepped outside, and finally did what I should have done years ago. I opened my banking app and one by one began shutting everything down. The mortgage payments? Cancel. Deborah's credit cards? Close. The monthly deposits into Sophia's account? Gone. The inheritance fund I had set up? Revoked. If they didn't need me at the wedding, let's see how they manage without my money too. I stood there on the porch, the cold night air biting at my skin, but it was nothing compared to the coldness I felt inside. They thought I was predictable. They thought I would always forgive, always stay. But they had made one fatal mistake. They underestimated how much betrayal I could take. And they were about to find out exactly what happens when the man they used finally stopped playing the fool. As far as I was concerned, I was done being their ATM. And I had no intention of ever looking back. I sat inside my car, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the house I had spent 30 years building. A house filled with birthdays, anniversaries, first steps, late-night family dinners. A home. Or at least that's what I used to believe. But a real home is built on love, respect, and belonging. And standing there now, it was clear. I didn't belong. Not to them. To them, I was just a wallet with legs. A convenience. Someone to call when the bills piled up or dreams needed funding. But when it came to truly including me in their lives, I was disposable. And the cruelest part? I had allowed it. I had excused it, ignored it, rationalized it. Told myself, that's just how families are. I thought if I kept giving, kept sacrificing, they'd eventually see my worth. They did see it. They just never valued it. A cold clarity settled in my chest. This wasn't a mistake. They weren't sorry. And they weren't going to change. So why the hell should I stay? I opened my phone and stared at my lawyer's number, my thumb hovering over it. One call. That's all it would take to set everything in motion. Divorce, financial restructuring, asset liquidation. Everything I had built could be taken away with a few signatures. Because without me they had nothing. I let out a slow breath, but I didn't call, not yet. I wasn't finished. I stepped out of the car into the freezing night and walked back toward the house, steady and calm. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to argue. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. When I stepped inside, Deborah sat at the dining table sipping her wine like nothing had happened. Sophia lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her expression blank. Neither of them looked guilty. Neither of them tried to explain. Because why would they? They believed they had already won. That I would sulk for a few days and go back to being the man they could use. I let the silence stretch until finally Deborah sighed and set her glass down. Are you done being dramatic? She asked. I smiled. Not because I found it funny, but because I knew something she didn't. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being done. I'm done all right, I said quietly. For the first time, a flicker of unease crossed her face. Look, Malcolm, she said, frustration creeping into her voice. I know you're upset, but it was just a wedding. You're acting like we burned the house down. I tilted my head slightly. Funny, I said. Because in a way you did. She scoffed. Oh, come on. I shifted my gaze to Sophia. And you? I asked. She barely looked up from her phone. Dad, you're overreacting. We didn't mean to hurt you. Mom thought. Mom thought, I repeated. Sophia hesitated, then shrugged. And right there, in that tiny, careless shrug, I saw everything I needed to know. I just went along with it, she said. It wasn't personal, she claimed. Not personal. My own daughter had knowingly gone along with leaving me out of her wedding, smiled for the cameras, danced under the lights, toasted her new life, all while I sat at home, still foolishly believing I held a place in her heart. And now she said it wasn't personal? Something inside me went still, numb. All right, I said quietly. Deborah frowned. All right? That's it. That's it. I turned and walked down the hall into the bedroom. I didn't slam the door. I didn't tear things off the walls or throw clothes into a suitcase in some impulsive rage. This wasn't impulsive. This was planned. Final. I opened the closet, grabbed a duffel bag and started packing the basics. Shirts, pants, nothing more. I didn't need much. I wasn't planning to come back. Behind me, I heard Deborah's voice drifting in from the hallway, sharp and dismissive. Oh, stop it, Malcolm. You're not leaving. Where would you even go? I zipped the bag, swung it over my shoulder and stood in the doorway. I don't know, I said honestly. But wherever it is, it'll be better than here. And for the first time all night, I saw it, a flicker of real fear in her eyes. She hadn't expected this. She had expected anger, shouting, a scene. What she hadn't expected was silence. Was me walking away. I brushed past her, feeling lighter with every step toward the front door. Malcolm, she called again, her voice sharper now, laced with panic. You're being ridiculous. I didn't answer. I didn't even look back. I just kept walking, one step then another, until I reached the door. I wrapped my fingers around the handle, pulled it open, and let the cold night air rush in, slicing through the false warmth of the house. Our house. No, not anymore. Not ours. Not mine. Just theirs. And they could keep it. Because I was done. Truly, completely done. I stepped outside and let the door click shut behind me. I didn't turn around. Not when my phone started buzzing in my pocket. Not when Deborah called my name again, her voice cracking. Not when I got into my car, started the engine, and pulled away from the house I had poured my life into. I had spent 3 decades sacrificing for them, building something they took for granted. And for the first time in 30 years, I felt free. They thought they had won, thought they could brush it all aside, laugh it off, and let time mend what they had broken. But they had no idea what was coming. Because when you take someone for granted long enough, you stop realizing what they truly give you, until the moment they take it all back. I drove through the quiet streets of Rosewood Heights, my hands tight on the steering wheel. The streetlights blurred slightly through the fog of emotion clouding my eyes. But it wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even shock. It was something deeper. Final. Done. I was done pretending. Done excusing. Done sacrificing for people who only saw me as a wallet with legs. It was a brutal thing to realize, that the people you built your world around never really considered you part of theirs. And now they were about to find out exactly what that felt like. When I pulled into the small empty parking lot of a rundown motel on the outskirts of town, I grabbed my phone, not to call Deborah, not to answer the flood of missed calls and texts, but for something else. I opened my banking app. For years, I had been the one quietly managing everything. The mortgage, the credit cards, the savings, the medical insurance covering not just my family but Deborah's mother too. I had funded their entire world, and they had spat in my face. That ended tonight. With a few quick taps, I locked the joint accounts, froze the credit cards, stopped the automatic mortgage payments, canceled Sophia's monthly allowance. Gone. I moved my personal savings into a new account under my name only. I wasn't naive. I knew Deborah would find out soon enough. She would call the bank, throw a fit, try to reverse the damage. But this time there was nothing she could do. Because I wasn't their safety net anymore. I was free. When she finally realized that for the first time in her life she had no control over me, that's when the panic would set in. And that's exactly what I was waiting for. I set the phone down and leaned back against the cheap motel headboard, staring up at the ceiling. For the first time in my life I felt light. I had spent decades giving. Tonight, for the first time, I had taken something back. And they were about to understand just how much I had given them. The desperation came quickly. When I woke up, there were 26 missed calls sitting on my phone. I ignored them, went about my morning routine, showered, grabbed a cheap coffee from the motel lobby, and stepped outside into the crisp morning air. By then, the messages started rolling in. First Deborah. Malcolm, what the hell is going on? My card just got declined at the store. Did you forget to pay the mortgage? I just got an email about a late fee. Call me now. This isn't funny. My accounts are frozen. I can't access anything. Fix this. Then Sophia. Dad, my card isn't working. Did something happen with the bank? Dad, answer me. Mom's freaking out. Seriously, what's going on? I have bills to pay. Are you mad about the wedding? Come on, Dad, it wasn't personal. You're making a huge deal out of nothing. There it was, the entitlement. The casual dismissal. The assumption that I would cave. They still didn't get it. They thought this was just another game. I smirked into my coffee and scrolled to the next message. Deborah again. Now, Malcolm, you're acting childish. You can't just cut us off like this. We are your family. Yes, the family card. I exhaled slowly and put the phone down. They weren't worried about me. They weren't calling out of guilt or regret. They were panicking because their safety net had snapped, and they had no clue how to survive without it. The first phone call came by noon. I let it go to voicemail twice. But curiosity got the better of me the third time. I picked up. Malcolm. Deborah's voice was shrill, frantic. I could hear background noise, probably the chaos at the bank. Good morning, Deborah, I said calmly, sipping my coffee. She paused, caught off guard by how at ease I sounded. Then she snapped, what the hell is going on? Why can't I access our accounts? Why is everything frozen? I hummed lightly. That's strange. Malcolm, this isn't funny, she barked. You think I'm joking? I asked, my voice steady. Silence. Then more controlled. Okay, I get that you're upset. But this is ridiculous. You're not thinking straight. No, Deborah, I said softly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. Another pause. Then a scoff. So what, you're punishing us? That's what this is. Oh no, I said, smiling faintly. This isn't punishment. This is me resigning. Resigning? She repeated, confused. From my role as your personal bank. A sharp inhale. Then anger. You can't just walk away from your responsibilities, Malcolm? I laughed. An honest, genuine laugh. Responsibilities? I repeated. You mean like paying for a wedding I wasn't even invited to? Silence again. And in that silence, I knew. I had already won. I didn't need to argue, didn't need to explain. They had made their choices. Now they could live with the consequences. By the end of the week, the fallout was obvious. Deborah had maxed out every card she still had access to. The mortgage was officially 2 weeks past due. Sophia's luxurious lifestyle had screeched to a halt. And me? I was fine. More than fine, I was free. I hadn't realized how much weight I'd been carrying until I let it all go. They had spent years using me, draining me, assuming I would always be there, predictable, dependable, endlessly giving. But they had made a critical mistake. They forced me to see the truth. And once I saw it, there was no going back. Now, as I sat in my small rented apartment, staring at the quiet new life unfolding in front of me, I smiled. Because this wasn't the end. No, this was just the beginning. The beginning of their regret. And for the first time, I wasn't the one who had to fix it. The thing about people who take you for granted is simple. They never see the consequences coming. They assume you'll always forgive, always fix, always stay. And for years I had. But when I finally walked away, when I stopped playing their game, that's when the real panic set in. At first, they thought it was a mistake. A glitch. A temporary tantrum. Deborah assumed it was a banking error. Sophia assumed I was just sulking, that I'd cool off and things would snap back to normal. But by the third day, reality started sinking in. The cards were still declined. The mortgage still unpaid. Sophia's account still empty. Their safety net was gone. Permanently. I hadn't just stopped helping. I had dismantled the entire system they had come to depend on. By the fourth day, my phone was blowing up nonstop. Deborah's messages swung wildly between anger and desperation. Malcolm, what the hell is going on? I just got an overdraft notice. Fix this. We can't access any of our savings. What did you do? This is insane. You can't just leave me like this. We have bills. We have responsibilities. And finally, the inevitable plea. I don't know what's gotten into you, but we need to talk. Please, Malcolm. Just call me. Then there was Sophia. At first, she tried to keep it casual. Hey Dad, I think there's something wrong with my bank account. Could you check? Maybe it's just an error. Then came the frustration. Dad, I have rent due. I need that money. Are you seriously ignoring me? And finally, the panic. Dad, please. I don't have enough to cover my bills this month. Just send it this one time and I swear I'll never ask again. I read each message slowly, sipping my coffee, feeling absolutely nothing. No guilt, no hesitation, only pure satisfaction. Because this was it. They were finally starting to understand what I had known for years. I was never truly appreciated. I was only expected to give, to support, to carry them. Now they were finally experiencing what it felt like to stand on their own. By the fifth day, messages weren't enough anymore. Now they were calling nonstop. The first call from Deborah went to voicemail. The second call, 2 minutes later, ignored. Sophia rejected. Deborah again. Pick up the damn phone, Malcolm, she snapped in one voicemail. I let them drown in their panic. By nightfall, the voicemails had stacked up. Out of curiosity, I played one. Deborah's voice came through the speaker. Tight, controlled, but dripping with frustration. Malcolm, this isn't funny. You need to fix this right now. I can't even buy groceries. All my cards are declined. What are you trying to prove? I smirked. I get that you're mad about the wedding, she continued, her tone shifting to something sweeter, more manipulative. But this is cruel, Malcolm. You're punishing your own family. Do you really want to be that man? There was the guilt trip. The desperate attempt to paint me as the villain. I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. I wasn't falling for it. Not this time. By the end of the first week, the panic had taken over. Sophia had maxed out the last of her credit cards. Deborah had called every bank she could, reaching out to relatives, even trying to borrow money. Nothing worked. They were unraveling. That night, my phone rang again. Deborah. I almost ignored it, until I noticed something different. She wasn't just calling. She was FaceTiming. I let it ring a few times before answering. When her face appeared on the screen, I barely recognized her. Disheveled hair. Pale face. All the poise and control she once had, gone. Malcolm, she breathed, her voice raw. I raised an eyebrow. Something wrong? I asked, sipping my coffee. She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. This version of me, calm, indifferent, untouchable, wasn't the man she was used to manipulating. I need to talk, she said finally. We are talking, I replied coolly. Her jaw clenched. Malcolm, I don't have time for this. We can't keep living like this. The bank won't reverse the freezes, the house payment is due in a few days, Sophia's panicking. She trailed off. And what does that have to do with me? I asked, tilting my head. Her mouth opened, then closed. She had no answer. For decades I had been the fixer. Now I wasn't lifting a finger. Malcolm, she tried again, voice softening. I know we hurt you. I know you're upset, but this isn't just about us. It's about family. Family, I repeated, letting the word hang there. She nodded quickly, hope lighting her eyes. Yes, family. We need to work this out. You need to come home. I laughed quietly, shaking my head. Deborah, let me ask you something. She hesitated. What? I leaned closer, my voice turning cold. Did I look like family when you threw a wedding without me? Silence. Absolute silence. Deborah's face drained of color. She knew. She knew there was no coming back from that. Good night, Deborah, I said calmly, ending the call. That night I slept better than I had in years. Because for the first time they weren't my responsibility anymore. I wasn't their safety net, wasn't their solution. I was just a man who had finally woken up, and tomorrow they would too. Because this wasn't a temporary lesson. This was permanent. And they had no one to blame but themselves. I knew the moment was coming, the moment they'd stop pretending it was just a misunderstanding and finally realize the truth. It had taken longer than I thought, wasted on anger, blame, and demands, convinced their outrage would somehow undo it all. But when their credit card stayed frozen, Their bills kept piling up and no help came. Reality hit them like a freight train. When the mortgage default notices started arriving, when Sophia's landlord began asking about her overdue rent, and when the groceries in the fridge ran low, that's when reality finally hit them. That's when they came looking for me. It was a quiet morning, the kind where the air was fresh, my coffee was warm, and I could feel the last remnants of my old life slipping away. I had been living in a modest, furnished apartment across town. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine, a place free from their expectations, demands, and constant sense of entitlement. I had just settled into my chair, my phone silenced, when the knocking began, loud and persistent. I didn't need to look through the peephole. I already knew it was them, Deborah and Sophia. The moment I had been waiting for had arrived. Setting my coffee down, I exhaled slowly and walked to the door. I let them knock one more time, harder, before finally opening it. There they stood, desperation written all over them. Deborah looked exhausted, her hair disheveled, her eyes heavy with frustration. Sophia stood slightly behind her, equally broken down. Gone was the confidence, the smugness, the casual dismissal. In their place were two people who finally understood what they had lost. "Malcolm," Deborah began, her voice tight but controlled. I leaned casually against the doorframe, calm, unbothered, and waited. She took a breath. "We need to talk." I tilted my head slightly. "About what?" Sophia shifted uncomfortably behind her mother. "Dad, come on, don't do this." "Do what?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. Deborah's composure cracked. "Enough of this," she snapped. "You've made your point. We get it. But this needs to end." "This?" I echoed, my voice cool. "Yes," she hissed, crossing her arms. "Your little act. The silent treatment. Your refusal to fix what you broke." I actually laughed. "You think I broke something?" "Obviously," she shot back. "You destroyed our finances overnight. I can't pay the mortgage. Sophia's struggling. What did you think would happen?" "I knew exactly what would happen," I said easily. Sophia's voice was smaller now. "Dad, please?" I looked at her, my daughter. The same daughter who had shrugged days ago and told me my absence at her wedding wasn't personal. The same daughter who had taken and taken without ever once thinking about the cost. And now she wanted mercy. I let the silence stretch, then smiled. "No." Deborah's eyes widened. Sophia took a tentative step forward. "Dad, wait." But Deborah wasn't interested in pleading. She still thought she could win. "You're being ridiculous, Malcolm," she snapped. "This is petty. Childish." "No," I interrupted firmly. She blinked. "You don't get to call me ridiculous, Deborah," I said, my voice low and steady. "You don't get to call me petty when you and Sophia threw a wedding that I paid for, without me. You don't get to act like I'm the unreasonable one when you spent years treating me like an afterthought." Deborah's lips tightened into a thin line. Sophia swallowed hard. "That's not fair," Sophia whispered. I laughed again. "Fair? Tell me, Sophia. Was it fair when you stood in front of me and said my presence didn't matter? Was it fair when you cashed every check I ever sent you, knowing you'd never invite me into your life?" She looked away. "It wasn't like that," she mumbled. "Then how was it?" I pressed. No answer. Because there wasn't one. Deborah sighed, rubbing her temples. "All right," she said, her voice softer. "We should have handled things differently." I let that sit for a moment. They weren't apologizing. They weren't admitting they were wrong. They were just maneuvering, trying to say the bare minimum to get me back in line. "I see," I said finally. "You should have handled things differently." Deborah nodded quickly. "Yes, exactly. And now we can fix it." "We?" I echoed, smirking. Deborah swallowed and tried again. "Malcolm, come home. Let's move past this. We can fix it together." There was the plea. The expectation that if they showed just enough regret, I'd fall back into my old role. The man who solved everything. But that man was gone. "Oh no," I said. Sophia's head snapped up. "What do you mean, no?" "I'm not fixing this. I'm not coming home. I'm not paying another cent." Deborah's face twisted in anger. "You're seriously abandoning your family?" I smiled. "No, Deborah. My family abandoned me a long time ago. I'm just finally accepting it." She opened her mouth, then closed it. No argument left. I took one last look at Sophia, wondering if she'd say anything real, but she just stood there, silent. That was all I needed to see. She was her mother's daughter. I exhaled slowly, stepped back inside, and closed the door. Deborah's voice rang out sharply behind me. "You'll regret this, Malcolm." I turned back one last time, smiling. "Oh no, Deborah, you will." Then I shut the door in their faces. I didn't bother checking my phone after that. Didn't listen to the voicemails. Didn't care what new excuses or insults they left behind. Because for the first time they realized I wasn't coming back. They were truly, completely on their own. For the first time in my life I had chosen myself, and it felt damn good. I knew silence wouldn't last forever, not with them. Deborah and Sophia were never the type to accept consequences gracefully. They were used to thinking that no matter how much damage they caused, I would always be there to clean it up. But this time when I closed the door they had nothing left to say. And that told me everything. I needed to know they weren't just angry, they were afraid. Afraid because, for the first time, there was no safety net. I had finally fully walked away. The first public cracks appeared less than a week later. Deborah had never worked a day in her life. Her entire identity was built on being the wife of a financially stable man, the woman who hosted dinner parties, made snide comments about other people's struggles, and shopped like money grew on trees. And for a long time it worked for her, because I let it. But now she was struggling and people were starting to notice. The first time I heard about it, I was standing in line at a coffee shop, waiting for my order when a voice behind me caught my attention. I swear I saw Deborah at the grocery store, using coupons. Coupons? Another voice laughed. No way, she used to tell me only broke people used those. I'm serious, the first person replied. She was arguing with the cashier over a discount. I thought she was going to lose it. I couldn't help but smirk. I could picture it clearly, Deborah standing at a checkout line, realizing in real time that she was no longer above consequences. For the first time in decades she was living like everyone else and she hated it. But it wasn't just Deborah who was feeling the burn. Sophia was crashing even harder. 4 years she had been the golden girl, bragging about her perfect life, flaunting expensive gifts she never paid for, acting like she was born lucky when in reality she was just being funded by me. Now she was scrambling to keep up appearances. Her friends noticed first, the same friends she used to travel with, dine at fancy restaurants with, shower with lavish gifts. Suddenly she wasn't offering to pay anymore. She wasn't shopping like she used to. The bragging stopped. And in their world, that meant something was wrong. I didn't even need to check my phone for updates. People talk. I saw Sophia at that boutique she loves, but she didn't buy anything. Yeah, I heard she's been dodging our brunch plans. You think something happened? Something happened, alright, she lost her golden ticket. She lost me. A month later the house was in trouble. It didn't happen right away, they had some leftover savings to keep things afloat, but it didn't last. They had never learned how to manage money and now it was painfully obvious. The first missed mortgage payment was a warning. The second came with penalties. By the third they were in serious trouble. That's when the bank called. Mr. Carter, we're reaching out regarding the property on Ashwood Lane. I sipped my coffee. Oh? What about it? We've noticed payments have been delayed, and since you're still listed as the primary on the mortgage, we wanted to check in. I smirked. Oh no, I appreciate the call, but that's no longer my responsibility. Pause. I'm sorry, sir. Are you saying you're surrendering the property? I'm saying the people living there need to figure it out on their own. Another pause. Understood, sir. We'll proceed with the standard process. That was all I needed to hear. Standard process meant foreclosure. Deborah and Sophia were about to learn exactly what happens when the person they used for decades finally stops paying the bills. It wasn't long before word got around. Deborah, the woman who spent years looking down on others, mocking their struggles, acting like she was part of some elite circle simply because she was married to me, was now the one struggling. And people were watching. Did you hear about Deborah? I heard she's late on her house payments. I thought they had money. What happened? What happened? They took him for granted, that's what happened. I knew it was only a matter of time before Sophia broke down. And when it finally came it was late at night. My phone buzzed. For a moment I considered ignoring it but curiosity won. Dad. Her voice was small, fragile. I said nothing, letting the silence sit heavy between us. Dad, I don't know what to do. I leaned back in my chair. About what? She swallowed hard. Everything. The bills, the house. Mom is freaking out. I think we're going to lose everything. I let her words hang in the air. This was the moment she finally understood, not just the financial consequences, but the reality that I wasn't coming back. I wasn't going to save them. For the first time in her life she was going to have to deal with the consequences of her choices. I'm sorry, she whispered. I sighed, rubbing my temple. Are you sorry, Sophia? Or are you just scared? She didn't answer right away, because she didn't know the difference. And that was the problem. I just want things to go back to how they were, she finally said. I smiled sadly. They never will. And with that I ended the call. By the end of the second month, the house officially went into foreclosure. Deborah tried to fight it, tried to appeal to the bank, but without my income she didn't stand a chance. Sophia ended up moving in with a friend, and me? I moved on. For the first time in my life I found peace, and I didn't feel even a shred of guilt. They had spent years treating me like I was disposable, like I was nothing more than a wallet. Now they were finally realizing the truth. I had been the only reason they ever had anything. And when I left, everything crumbled. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This wasn't just revenge, this was justice. And it was long overdue. I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, the cool morning air brushing against my skin as I sipped my coffee. For the first time in decades life was quiet. No urgent emails about payments. No last-minute calls from Deborah demanding money for emergencies she had conveniently forgotten to mention. No passive-aggressive texts from Sophia trying to guilt-trip me into funding her lifestyle. Just peace. And I was finally learning what that felt like. A life free from endless obligations. It had been 3 months since I cut them off, 3 months since I walked away from the house, the responsibilities, the endless cycle of giving without receiving. At first, I wasn't sure what to do. I had spent so many years living for them that I had forgotten how to live for myself. Now, I was waking up when I wanted, spending money on myself for once, traveling to places because I wanted to, not because someone else demanded a vacation. I hadn't spoken to Deborah or Sophia since that last call. I had no intention to. But word traveled fast. Deborah, despite her best efforts to stall, lost the house. She ended up moving in with a distant cousin, someone she had spent years looking down on. I couldn't help but smile at the irony. The woman who once bragged about never needing anyone was now crashing in someone else's spare bedroom. And Sophia? She had lost everything. She was still married, but her life with Tyler wasn't what she imagined. Without my money cushioning her lifestyle, she was forced to live within his means, and it wasn't enough. A friend of mine who worked in finance told me he had seen her at a restaurant, out with friends. When the bill came, they expected Sophia to cover it like she always had. But she hesitated, fumbled through her purse, and finally admitted she couldn't afford it. I could only imagine the humiliation. And the best part? She had done it to herself. One evening, just as I got back from the gym, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in months. Dad. I almost laughed. I almost hung up right then and there. After everything, the lies, the disrespect, the years of taking me for granted, she had the nerve to call now. Sophia, I said, my voice steady. Another pause. Then a shaky breath. I didn't think you'd pick up. Why did you call? I asked. I don't know, she said. But that wasn't true. She knew exactly why she was calling. How's Tyler? I asked casually, sipping my water. He's fine, she said too quickly. And your mother? Managing, she said with a heavy sigh. Translation, barely getting by. And they wanted me to feel sorry for them. Is that why you called? I asked, my tone unreadable. To give me a status update on your mother? No, I mean, she faltered. I miss you, Dad. I let those words hang in the air. For years I had wanted to hear them. For years, I had hoped she would finally see me as more than a bank account. But now, I wasn't sure I cared anymore. You miss me? I repeated evenly. Yes, she whispered. Or do you miss what I used to do for you? Silence. And that was my answer. She wasn't calling because she missed me. She missed the safety net I had been. Dad, please, she said after a moment, her voice breaking. I don't want things to be like this. Can we just talk? I smiled slightly. We are talking, Sophia. She exhaled sharply. You know what I mean. I did. But I wasn't interested. I spent years talking, I said quietly. Years trying to be part of your life. Years giving and giving, waiting for you to see me as something more than a wallet. She said nothing. And you never did, I continued. Not until it was too late. Another long pause. So, that's it, she finally asked. That's it, I confirmed. We're just done? There was a time when those words would have broken me. When the idea of losing my daughter would have shattered my heart. But now it felt like freedom. I didn't walk away from you, Sophia, I said calmly. You walked away from me. You and your mother both. I just finally stopped chasing you. Silence again. Then finally she broke. I'm sorry, she whispered. It was the first real apology she had ever given me. And maybe once upon a time it would have mattered. But not anymore. I sighed. Take care of yourself, Sophia. Before she could say another word, I ended the call. I sat there for a long time afterward, not because I was sad or regretted anything, but because I truly knew. I was done. She had apologized. But I had moved on. And I wasn't reopening a door that should have been closed years ago. I turned my phone on silent, poured myself a drink, and stepped onto my balcony. The night was cool. The city lights shimmered. And for the first time in a long, long time, my life was finally my own.
Thanks for listening. Share your opinion in comment section and also do like and subscribe to the channel.